Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator here on America's Next. I have Marsha Thornton with me today. How are you, Marsha?
I'm well, thank you, Cedric. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Where are you these days?
Where am I?
Yes.
At my kitchen table, where a lot of people, I've been working virtually since March 12th or so, and got myself a nice, comfortable work chair, and this is where I am most days.
And okay, now are you based out of Ohio?
Yes, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's not where I wasn't born here, but I've lived here for, oh gosh, 18 years. So I have two children, and both of them were born in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm. Now tell me, what was your childhood like?
Oh boy, you're gonna go straight there, huh, Cedric? So I was born in Detroit, Michigan.
It's necessary.
Yeah. And my mother was married to my father when she was in high school. And so I just think of what that's like now, being 17 or 18 and married with my older sister. And then I came a couple years later. So like most people in high school, they thought they were like in love and all that stuff. And it didn't work out, and they divorced. And then my dad ended up having custody of my sister and I. And it was during the time when like Kobe hadn't created this image of dad being cool, right, with two girls. It wasn't cool back then. Right. So all the love and affection that we see Kobe demonstrating, or saw him demonstrating with his daughters, I wasn't really getting all that. But when I was 11 or so, I relocated, and my mom got custody of my sister and I, and that's when I started living in Indianapolis. So I spent most of my childhood in Indianapolis, grade school, middle school, high school, graduated from Indiana State, went back to Detroit for a couple years, and then moved to Cincinnati for a job opportunity.
Okay. Now, I want to take it slow a little bit, because we have some of your time today, and I think it's going to be a gift for everybody. Can you tell me, do you have any brothers?
I do have a brother. So I have a younger brother. So when my mom and dad, so my sister and I have the same mother and father, and then my younger brother, we have the same mother, and we don't have the same father, but I do have a younger brother.
Okay, and tell me, what was school like for you?
School was, I was a good student. I will say, when I was in high school, it was during a time where my dad was really struggling with drugs and alcohol. And so I carried a lot of burden and worry in school, but I was very involved. I was a cheerleader and class president, and just really connected and was very engaged in my high school. But I always had kind of that weight of a parent who was addicted. And of course, my mom gave me and my stepdad gave us a good home. But that energy of, well, I get a call that he's either OD'd or, gotten into some trouble with people in the neighborhood. I have to say that was constantly on my mind. So, but I dealt with it, and enjoyed school. Met a lot of great people. Many of them I'm still friends with from high school and in college.
Right. It's deep that you faced some adversities when you were younger, and a lot of people who grow up in metropolitan areas across the world, they grow up with adversities, but all of them don't take those and turn them into the positives like you did. And I want to commend you for that today.
Yeah, so you know, I would sometimes say that my childhood, especially when I grew up in Detroit, really gave me the desire to want something different. And not from a judgmental standpoint, but just what made me happy, what made me comfortable. I realized that I needed something different. And so when it came down to, you know, my grades, I knew that having a certain GPA was important. I knew that potentially there were some strikes against me because one, I'm African American. Two, I'm a woman. Three, I grew up in the ghetto. Four, you know, I experienced poverty and hunger. And so there were all these, the statistics would say I wasn't supposed to be in the position that I am now. But I
Right.
carry the grit and the perseverance that a lot of our African American brothers and sisters carry. And so I just use that to my advantage.
Wow, that's special. The way that you decided to get out in front of the challenges that you faced, and that you went through it, and you became the person that you are today. You know, just a funny note about Detroit. I was in a barbershop conversation one day, and I was saying that Detroit was just an insignificant small city, and
Blasphemy.
and little and I could not have been more wrong,
Yeah.
because that whole entire barbershop started teaching me about the importance of Detroit and
Yes.
how Detroit was part of the engine of America,
Yep.
from a production standpoint, from a manufacturing standpoint, from a musical standpoint, all different types of reasons why Detroit is part of the heart of America.
Absolutely. I'll tell you that when I graduated from college, I went through a program called Inroads, and then I worked for Kroger as a store manager. And then when I decided to do something different, I got an offer with Inroads, and they said, "We want you to move to Detroit." And I thought, wait a minute, we had not talked about that. It was a regional recruiting position. And so I had never thought about moving to Detroit as an adult. And I'm so blessed that I did. One, it was during a time where my grandfather was really ill. And so I was able to spend some of the last few years with him. Two, the culture, the energy of the Black people in Detroit it is just something to see. And so when you opened up and said, "Welcome home," I can tell you, I felt like I was at home in Detroit. And it is a great city. There are amazing people there. Um, so yeah, don't sleep on Detroit, Cedric.
Yeah, no more sleeping, no more sleeping. And also, if you look at the architecture of the downtown area, like it's like a wheel with spokes,
Yeah.
just like Paris, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. Again, the art, the culture, the festivals, the poetry, the music. When I was there, there was never a dull moment. And but I can tell you that Detroit still has a negative perception, because at that time, oh gosh, I don't even remember how old I was, maybe 26 or so. And I was single, and I worked downtown. And, you know, when you're a single person, you just kind of go to the office at different hours on the weekend if you just need to get some work done. And I remember I would be talking to one of my siblings or my mom, and they're like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to my car." "Wait, it's 10 o'clock at night. It's not safe." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a myth that, you know, there's all this crime in Detroit. When I walk past the brothers and sisters, I speak to them and they speak to me, and I keep on going." So, yeah, I love Detroit.
Right. Now we were talking about school. I have to ask, did you ever imagine a time when the rest of the school year would be canceled about halfway through?
No, not at all. And even when they announced that the school was going to be out for 2 weeks, I just thought 2 weeks. I'm thinking, I can do this. I can homeschool for 2 weeks. That turned into 2.5 months. And now I am a camp counselor. So I never imagined I'd be a camp counselor too, because having a
Right.
13-year-old and an 11-year-old, I really need to make sure that they stay engaged. And one is coming. Honey, we're on the air. Oh, wow. Sorry.
Well, how you
See, that's
doing?
what happens. I can
Right.
be on the
I was
call
going
with.
to ask. I
Say
was
that
going to
again.
ask, how do you keep them active?
So during the summer, I have identified 3 hours of summer enrichment, and I just Google different resources. I select 6 items per day, and the topics range from politics to researching historically Black colleges or Ivy League colleges. And again, they're only 13 and 11, but just things to get their minds to stay active. We've done nutrition. We have done art and science projects. And I just like take my phone and Google different resources, links, and we create an agenda. And there's some days that they might have a little off day, like today, both got braces. And so I just gave them the day off because that was quite the experience. But tomorrow we'll be back at it with their 6 assignments.
Right. So you had to make some changes to your daily regimen, basically.
I did. Now, I'm really blessed that they are pretty self-sufficient. But as I mentioned, I do my work from my kitchen table. You can't see on the other side, but this is my kitchen table. My 13-year-old is so amazing. The other day he came and he said, I figured out how to turn the beep off the LG microwave. And he said, and I'm
Okay.
like, what? He said, yeah, because when you're on your work calls, I don't want to disrupt you with, when you press the number and you hear all the beep. And so I thought
Wow.
very, very thoughtful. But I will say I
Yeah.
had to be very intentional because I was so focused on work and I was physically present, but I wasn't mentally present for them. And there will be times where they would ask me a question and I would stop them because, I'm on this such an important meeting. And I had friends and mentors that I would talk to, spiritual advisors that helped me realize that I need to be present for them. And so I just talked to my boss and the team about what is realistic when we are working from home. It is not realistic for us to not hear dogs barking or people that have children or even the neighbor's lawnmower. You just have to learn how to navigate, give people grace, put your phone on mute so it's not disruptive. But for the most part, people are trying really hard to mix this work and home life. And I think we just need to give each other some grace.
Without a doubt. And so it seems like we're all reaching new levels of understanding. And those new levels of understanding are going to carry us really far. And I think that our children and our family members are going to remember that too. This is a period of time where we pretty much all have taken a personal inventory. And if not just a personal inventory, we've taken a reflective moment on life itself.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the value of sharing those reflections that you have on life with the community, with other people that you might know?
Yeah, I think it's really important, especially during the time of quarantine. The reality is there are a lot of people suffering with things like mental illness. And so
Mhm.
being in quarantine and having to deal with their thoughts, I have tried to give hope, provide encouraging words, just within my family and externally, because I've recognized that everybody's dealing with the pandemic in different ways. There's some of us who have family members who have passed away from COVID, and I have, or they had it and they recovered. There's some people that they don't know anyone who had it, and so they struggle to make the connection. But it's been very important to me to, connect on phones. When I go on a walk, I try to call people and just catch up with them. So I do still feel very connected to my loved ones, even though I haven't physically seen them in person. And I just, as much as I can, it's going to sound kind of cheesy, Cedric, but I just try my best to spread love, because you never know what smile, how it will impact somebody, what word of encouragement, what just acknowledgement of their being, what that will do for them in that moment. And so as much as I can, I try to share that with the world, with the community, with my family.
That's outstanding. When I first met you, I was an Inroads scholar. And before I have you talk a little bit about Inroads, I want to let our community out there know that you were an instructor and you were also a role model for hundreds of scholars from a variety of different educational backgrounds when I first met you. And so I want to know, first, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about Inroads, but then I want you to talk to us about your first community initiative. How long have you been involved in the community and providing leadership for the community?
Wow. So Inroads is an organization very near and dear to my heart. It's a nonprofit, and their mission is to develop and talented minority youth and place them in corporate and community leadership. And I went through Inroads when I was in high school, and so they helped me to get an internship with Kroger. And it was so strange because I had never known anyone who had a successful career in grocery retail until I learned later on. But I had said, I don't want to bag groceries. Like, I'm a college student, and I have this perception of what working at a grocery store in a management training program. And so Inroads really helped me understand that there was a great career in retail management, and it really helped expand and grow my leadership. And so I took the internship, had an amazing career, great intern, went in as a co-manager and then as a store manager. And then at the age of about 25 or so, I realized that life of 60, 70 hours a week was a bit much. And I just felt like there was something else for me. And so I left with my sponsoring company, which is Kroger, and went to work full time for Inroads. And I always knew that, there are people who will complain about different things. And then there are people who will acknowledge that there are things that need to be fixed and that they can be a part of the solution. And so that was one of the reasons I was so committed to working for Inroads, because it was a great organization. I felt like there was opportunity to make it better. And so I joined the regional recruiting staff and then became a managing director. And when you say that I impacted or touched the lives of students, that is, it still does my heart well to hear that, that I can be a part of the solution. I can be what so many people were to me. And I learned so much from the students, and many of them now, like, they started out as my mentee, but they're adults, they have children, they have husbands and wives, and so now they're friends. And I don't believe that all of my friends need to be my age. I do find value in having productive relationships with younger individuals, older individuals, white, black, different religions, and so forth.
Right. And part of what I took from what you were saying was that for any of our young professionals who might be listening to this broadcast, that just because you're at an entry level, whether it be a grocery bagger or a cashier, does not mean that you can't climb the ranks of that company. Is that correct?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. So I started as a management trainee, and at the age of 23, I was a store manager of a store that was right across the street from our corporate office. And so it was considered like a test store. And so all the executives would come in and I would build relationships. Some of them I still have relationships with. And so I would never discount an opportunity, right? Regardless of what you're doing. There's this quote about if you're the street sweeper, be the best street sweeper out there. And right. So I never look down on positions, because everybody can't be the CEO of a financial institution, and everybody can't be the math teacher. And so we need people to really try to explore their passion and figure out where they fit in this world so that they can make a difference.
Mhm. Right, right.
Yeah.
Now, do you also place value on those people who decide to be community workers or human service workers or any other variety of type of work? How do you look at people who don't work in corporate America?
I say whatever works for you. And so corporate America works for me. But I also have a lot of community engagements. So I'll probably say if I didn't have the opportunity to be actively engaged in my church, to be actively engaged on community boards, and actively engaged in a after school program, I probably wouldn't love what I do. So I have learned I have a balance. I work in corporate, that's how I get paid, but then I have opportunities to do things out in other places. Um, Inroads was a nonprofit, and so I do know what it's like to work in a nonprofit environment, and you may not have as many resources. You got to be much more creative, but it really does, in a way, challenge your leadership. But I absolutely believe, healthcare workers, anybody out in the social sector, even pastors and teachers, like we all have an assignment, we all have gifts and talents. And as long as you are fulfilling your purpose, then I say go for it.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I want to talk a little bit about mentorship. What is a mentor?
Yeah, that's interesting. And if I could take a step back, oftentimes in corporate, they will say you got to have a mentor, and as if it's just one person. And in my life, what has
Okay.
worked for me is I've had tons of mentors, and it's a very fluid relationship. And so there are some situational mentors, there are some mentors that might be for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I think the role of a mentor should be reciprocal. So there should be reciprocal value. And it's not this situation where this higher level person is giving all this wisdom to a lower level person. It should be a situation where you're learning from each other's life experiences. One person might give some advice that might not be what the mentee, there's nothing that says you must take the advice of your mentor. And if you're mentoring someone and they
Right.
don't take your advice, you can't take it personally. And so, and then the other piece, I think you might have mentoring relationships, but they might also serve as a coach, as an advocate, as a friend, as an advisor. So again, it's very fluid. And I would say don't get bogged down in the term mentor. Figure out what value you add to the relationship and what you can gain from the relationship.
How can the mentor and the mentee ensure that they get the very most value out of that relationship?
I would say transparency and communication. And so, one, the
Okay.
both need to have some self-awareness around what they need or where they may have gaps. And they need to be
Mhm.
vulnerable enough to share those with the mentor and mentee. There has to be trust. And one, the mentor should not be the problem solver or should not speak on behalf or share the insights with other people on behalf of the mentee. It is really up to the mentee should provide guidance and allow the mentor to work it out unless the mentee specifically asks for that person to go and speak on their behalf. So I've seen where that can be a little tricky. And the question I always
Okay.
advise people, the mentee should say, hey, I'm going to share something, but there isn't anything I need you to do with this information, but give me guidance. So they might have to be very direct in what they are asking when they're sharing whatever, if they're maybe having an issue.
Okay. So my next question would be, Um, I had a conversation with the older gentleman, and he was saying to me that after working for 23 years in a factory, that the skills that he had as a machine operator was all he knew, even though he really wanted to be an actor. And it brought to my mind the question of whether or not he was old enough or too old at 53 years old to have a mentor. Are you
No,
ever too old to have a mentor?
no, I don't think so. And I think
Okay.
I would encourage everybody to have mentor. And again, don't get caught up in the terminology. Some people might think mentor means somebody at this level is like sharing wisdom and it's all about pouring into this person. If you look at the mentoring relationship more like this, then all ages have the opportunity to share wisdom with one another. And so at whatever age he is, whether it's somebody younger or somebody older, he could provide some amazing insight to them. So I think that could be a great reciprocal
Mhm.
value relationship.
So in a sense, we're all partners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Because I had a conversation with that gentleman. I was like almost disheartened to hear that he wanted help, but he was like, "This is all I know." And the thing about that comment, "This is all I know," is that I hear that from a lot of people in older generations. This is all I know. But from now on, I'm going to suggest to them that they go out and they find a mentor. How can one go out and find a mentor if they don't have one already?
Yeah, it is. I encourage. Um, what's the term? I don't like when, like, for example, they're assigned. I prefer to meet people, talk to them, and after a period of time, realize, you know what? I think this could be a mentoring relationship. I don't believe that you could identify somebody to be your mentor after one interaction. And I do think that
Mhm.
people make that mistake often because maybe they see somebody speaking. And I'm sure they've seen, you've been on stage and speaking, and people come up to you and get your card, and everybody wants you to be their mentor. And first of all, I think you need to pray about whether you're going to be somebody's mentor. And so I would discourage anybody from on the spot agreeing to be a mentor. That's the first thing. The second thing is have a coffee, have a virtual exchange with them, understand their values and what it is that they're trying to get out of the relationship. And then again, pray about whether this is something God wants you to do, and then have then determine what the next step looks like. Because initially you may think, oh, this person would be a great mentor for me, and you realize that either they don't have the time to do it, maybe they have too many mentees, or they don't have the level of expertise that you were looking for. And you could still engage in a relationship from just a colleague, or time to time reach out to somebody and just a network with them, but not a formal kind of mentoring relationship.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to Marsha Thornton today. She has a wealth of information to offer the community, young and old. I think that everybody could take some level of insight out of this interview. And so I want you guys to share this stream, subscribe to our channel, and let everybody know that we're having a dynamic conversation that's going to bring value to our listeners. We'll also be right back after a brief break.
On there, because it's about to come off.
And we're back. All right. And so, Marsha, I wanted to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about mentorship in the family. Can mentorship be done in our families as well?
Um, yes, right. I think family members can provide advice and coaching. I would, when we're thinking about like when young people are putting mentors or making referrals on their resume, I would discourage them from using a family member as a referral for a job, that type of thing. But absolutely, I mean, I have younger cousins, I have aunts and uncles that I call to get advice on certain things, and they may call to get advice from me. And so, absolutely.
So I'm a big fan of, and before we get a little bit further into this concept, Kathy Joe says, ask her about the high school commencement speech she did with the 2-hour notice.
Wow. Yeah. So Kathy and I, we are the co-leads of an after-school program here in Cincinnati called Gems for Life. And
Okay.
for the past 2 years, we would meet every Tuesday with middle school girls to talk about just to provide support to them, leadership, recommendations, coaching, mentorship, take them on field trips and so forth. Well, the middle school has a high school attached. And so one day at about 2 o'clock, I get a call from one of the staff members, and she says, Marcia, I got a big ask. And I'm like, oh, what is it? Now I'm at work. And she's like, I mean, it's huge. And I'm thinking, it cannot be that big. What is it? She said, my commencement speech person just informed us she couldn't make it. And I said, okay. She said, I'm wondering if you can do it. I said, sure. Let me check my calendar, make sure I'm free on the day. When is it? She said, it's tonight. I said, like tonight, 2 o'clock? I said, what time? She said, 5:30. Oh my gosh. And I had meetings up until that time. And so that was the grace of God that allowed me to pull content together that I thought was relevant to those students, to their parents, give them an encouraging word. I wasn't up there too long, but it really was a blessing to be there.
Right. Right. Wow. We're getting a lot of good comments in the building today, and I think that we're on a good trend of thought here. I want to also talk about how we grow into the leaders of our families. And so there's a term that's tossed around in corporate America. If I'm not mistaken, the term is succession. Have you heard of that term?
Yeah, there's a process called succession planning. And it is really intended for if somebody is in a current job, what is the plan to move them to the next level if they're interested? Or if someone departs a position that maybe you were not prepared for, what would be the plan to ensure that you don't have a gap? And so, yeah, succession planning is, I had a couple friends who led that work at my current employer and a previous employer.
Right. So the reason why I asked that is because in my different type of world, I see that we could be mentoring the next uncles and the next aunties and the next mothers and fathers today. We could be mentoring them into those positions. Yeah. And I think that the process of mentoring them into those positions would be like succession planning for the family. What do you think about that concept?
You know, I've never made that connection, but I think it's right on. So, for example, I think I shared I have two sons, an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, and everything I do is not looking at them as an 11 and 13-year-old, but thinking of them as one day they may be someone's father, they may be someone's husband. And so for me, the succession is, what do they need to know now so that they are productive citizens in 10 and 15 years? I've had people ask, you know, won't you be sad when your boys grow up? And my response is no, because I feel like they are on loan to me anyway, right? They're really a gift of God. And he wants me to raise them up in the appropriate way so that they can go out and contribute to the community, right? Fulfill the dreams and the assignments that he has for them. So I do believe that we are, in a way, parenting is about succession planning.
Right, without a doubt. I see that. I see that as a way for us to re-strengthen our families and to re-knit our communities. That's the way. That's the way that I see that. And here you are doing just that with the conversations that you have with people in your family and around your community. I noticed that because I follow you on social media, and I do that with a lot of people. I pay attention to the things you do on social media, and to me, it's like I'm keeping up with you, but it doesn't substitute a phone call. But I can see even from a distance that you include your sons in your leadership initiatives. And in pre-production, you told me that you took your sons to speak to Congress. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, the Black Lives Matter, the tragedy that happened with George Floyd impacted me greatly as an individual, as a mother of two Black sons. And my message is around, right now they're 11 and 13, and people think they're so cute, and they're athletic, and they're super smart and engaged. But the doctor recently told us that they'll probably stand 6'2", 6'3", right? And in about 5 years, or maybe even less, when they leave, they won't be looked at as cute. They will be looked at as either a threat or aggressive, and all these negative terms that I hear about Black men. And so it has become extremely personal for me. I have a brother, I have uncles, I have cousins that are amazing. I have a husband, amazing men. But I do know when they go to certain places, people, there's fear. And so I went to city council yesterday, and they had a law and safety committee meeting. And I allowed my 13-year-old to speak. And I said, I'm here to put a face to why reform is important. Because if not, it's just policy, it's just paperwork, it could be rhetoric, it's just people talking. But we need to put a face and a heart to the change that we want to see. And so the response was amazing. I didn't expect any kind of response, and I don't want to even take credit or get any accolade, because I do believe it's about doing what God wants us to do. And I really felt like this is the time for us to fight and bring awareness and drive change. So then when my sons are my age and when they are fathers, that doesn't have to be a part of their succession plan. How do you overcome racism? We'll already get it taken care of now, so that they can have productive lives, be able to fulfill their dreams, same as you and your family, and others who are on the call.
Without a doubt, what you're saying is deep and it resonates deeply. It resonates very deeply. How did it feel when you saw your son approach that microphone and say the way that he felt to city council?
You know, um, of course, very proud, but he is, I believe, fulfilling his assignment. And his without saying his name, the scripture, I selected his name based off the scripture: before you were born, I knew you. I set you apart to be a prophet, a leader over the nation. And I have shared that scripture with him many times. He has internalized it. And even at the age of 13, I'm helping him understand that he too is a leader, and that we all have a part to play. It's not okay for us to sit back and say they need to do something. Everybody else needs to make a change. The police, everybody wants to point the finger. I feel like regardless of where we are in this United States, we all have a role to play. It could be a different role, but we all must take action to eradicate racism, increase awareness, drive change. Like, we have to be the change we want to see. We can't sit back and allow other people to do it, or just blame everything on the government. I know they have a lot of power, but I believe God gave us more power, and it's up to us to stand up and make it happen.
Absolutely. I want to know, how did the city council react? Were they blown away? What was their reaction when they saw this powerful woman come there, not just by herself, but with her sons, and then you all spoke as a family? What was the reaction of city council at that time?
You know, it's a hard question for me to answer because I am a very humble person. So I don't want to boast, but it was overwhelming. First of all, they were the only children there. And if I could go back, they woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning during their summer break. It was raining, so we navigated the rain, and they sat for 2 hours and 45 minutes just listening to this meeting. And as you can imagine, that's hard for adults. So for a 11-year-old and a 13-year-old to actively engage for 2 hours and 45 minutes before they even called up. And when they called us up, they said, "You got 2 minutes." I said, "We won't be before you long." And my oldest said what he needed to say. I joined, and I thought we were going to just step away. And the chairman of the committee shared some very personal remarks about God ordaining us to be there, and why he felt that way. It just was amazing. And then the different council members speaking about how my son presented himself, how we are raising them. And then afterwards, a police officer joined us and asked if he could connect with them and they could help lead some of their activities. And so I do believe in positive police relationships. And so I look forward to what that might look like and turn out to be.
Right. You all are changing the narrative of effective community engagement with the choices that you made. And what we're drawing out of this conversation for our viewership with America's Next Motivator is that it's vitally important that we apply principles of mentorship and succession planning. Those are two buzzwords or keywords that we need to gather and apply to the way that we civilize and the way that we grow our families.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two of the things that we're getting out of today's conversation.
Yeah, and I'll say, if people feel like, "Oh, I've never experienced succession planning," or mentorship sounds like just too formal, to me, it's about, you have to educate. Like, kids need to be educated. We have to we have to be positive. We have to lift them up because there are so many things that will tear them down. And so, not just as a mother, but when I go out in the community, my husband is a coach. He coaches basketball, football, baseball, but just how he interacts with the young people, how he interacts with the other parents. I think that we all have a role to help support each other. And it doesn't always have to be super formal, but there is some assignment that we have, and we must ask God what it is that you want from me, and then pursue it with our full heart.
How do you start conversations with your husband and with your children about the state of things that are going on in our society, and how do you all keep that balance of positivity?
You know, I think our faith, we are, even my youngest, we are people of faith. We're Christians. So we're not of the world, right? So that that's probably it. Our faith keeps us grounded. Despite what we see in the world, I know that God is bigger than COVID. He's bigger than racism. He's bigger than any challenge we may face. And so even when we are facing those things, I know I can turn to him, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and ask for guidance, ask for direction, go to his word. And there's always like, it's our faith.
I got you.
It's just hard to put it into words, but yeah.
So what would you say to a young lady out there who might have just graduated from college? She might have, been working really hard throughout the last 4 years, just graduated college. She's looking at a great new career. She's just getting started in life. What would be a book that you suggest that she read?
The Bible.
Yeah, I walked you into that one, right?
Right. First of all, for anybody who recently graduated from high school, college, or any kind of success that you've experienced, finger snaps to you, hand claps, kudos to you for whatever whatever accomplishments that you have made. I so that this might not be what you want to hear, but so when I read, I don't always read motivational books. I read like romance novels or just kind of chick flicks, just things that make me feel real girly and about people falling in love and different things like that. And so I may not have a good recommendation, but there are tons of resources out there, whether it be, if you're not a book reader, you can get the Audible books to have it read to you. Those are always great. You can do the podcast, that's always great when I'm on my walks. I do listen to a lot of sermons when I'm on my walks, whether it be my pastor or other pastors. And so that helps keep me grounded.
Okay. And I like your hair. I got to say that too. I really like your hairstyle. When did you? Yeah, let's see it.
Wait. I'm trying to get this. Yeah. So what's your question? I'm sorry.
My question is, how long have you been growing that hairstyle?
So, gosh, I started my locks when I was pregnant with my oldest son. So 13 years. And I did cut about 4 inches off a couple years ago, and it just keeps growing. But I've had natural hair for a long time. And the funny story, my dad had locks that I started for him, and he passed away when I was pregnant. And I use aloe vera gel, just the stuff you use for put on your skin. That's what I used to lock his hair. And so once he passed away, I cleaned out his place and used the rest of the aloe vera gel. And so I say that this is not necessarily my hairstyle. This is my tribute to my father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I see the lock hairstyle, among others, right? There are waves for men. There are cornrows for men. There are all different types of hairstyles that we wear. And when I see someone who's taken the time to really groom themselves properly as far as their hair is concerned, what I see is somebody who's spiritually in tune. And I see somebody who might also know a little bit about history. And so can you talk to me a little bit about hair culture and how that might look in the workplace?
Yeah. So there is a perception that everybody with locks are super deep. And that's a myth. Because again, to some people, it is a hairstyle. And so
right.
I will say that there are people in corporate who might not agree that wearing natural hair or having locks is the corporate look, if you will. But I think you go with the level of confidence and, of course, make sure it's groomed very well at all times and just rock it. And so oftentimes there are questions about the hair, how long, and, all types of questions. And I do answer the questions because I appreciate when people feel comfortable enough to ask me a question versus not asking and then not knowing.
Mm-hmm. I remember a time when people would say, if you put braids in your hair, you will not be getting a job. Do you remember comments like that?
Yes, I do. And that still is true. I think we have to be very aware of the environment and the culture in which we are applying for the job. And so there are some cultures that are still extremely conservative, and you have to determine, do you want to conform to that culture? The answer may be no. Or the answer may be yes, but I always think about it as, like, for example, I told you I was a sports mom, and when I go to a sports game, I will wear the t-shirt of the team and I'll have on gym shoes because that's the appropriate attire for the sports activity. So you have to just figure out what's important and what's appropriate. I'm sorry, we're getting ready for baseball, so here's some background. Again, working from home.
This is life. This is life television. And that's what we do here. We're regular people having regular conversations and making sure that we're driving critical points home. Today, everybody, we're talking to Marsha Thornton, and what we've drawn out of this conversation is the importance of mentorship, the importance of succession planning for family members, and understanding that you have to take care of yourself the very best way that you can so that you can have cultural competence when you go to work as well. Marsha, what is your mantra in life? What is it that what one phrase do you live by?
It's probably be the change you want to see in the world. And it goes back to that. We can all observe and acknowledge the negative things, the things that need to be fixed. But unless we're willing to be a part of the solution, I don't want to hear the complaints. I don't want to hear about how bad it is unless you're willing to make the sacrifice to make it better. So I would say be the change you want to see in the world. I wanted to see a change in my community, and so I go out and I advocate. I want to see a change in how people relate to one another, and so I help coach and give advice in relationships and different things like that. And so just be the change you want to see.
Absolutely. I think that what you've done is the epitome of overcoming. And you started out in Detroit, not the Detroit of old that we read about in the history books, but the Detroit that was rough and required a lot of resiliency for you to get to the next levels of life. And so I definitely commend you for that. There are different things that could be coming down the pike for us, but we're going to stay strong. We're going to make the decision to keep communicating with each other, to keep stepping out, to keep reaching out and doing advocacy, and to walk your talk, as Kathy Joe says. And so I think that's what we all need to keep in our minds. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years, Marsha?
Let me see, how old am I? 40. Hopefully healthy, happy with my family, still making a difference in the community, driving change. Yeah.
Okay. I have to ask, are you also vegan? What do you think about the vegan move?
See, that's that stereotype. People with locks, everybody assume they're vegan or they're vegetarian. I am not. I unfortunately during this pandemic have been eating a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't. But again, I go back to whatever works for the individual, and I try to live by a no judgment type of. I take a no judgment approach. So it's not up to me to judge how other people, what decisions they make and what's best for them. I think God created us all differently. And so there are things that are important to some people that may not be important to others. I wish I had the discipline. I do have a lot of respect for people who have that level of discipline. If somebody want to help a sister out, get better, just shoot me an email or something.
Right. Hey, I only ask because not because of your hairstyle, but because I just remember you eating these huge salads with strawberries and sliced almonds, and just like, a lot of people they'll get a box of salad and they'll take like a handful and just eat that, but you would actually eat the whole box of salad. So I was just wondering if you, that's why I asked that question.
what's interesting, my boys enjoy salad. So my husband makes like the best chef salad. And it's just really great when he's like, what are we gonna have for dinner? We can't figure it out. He's like, oh, I'll just make a big salad. And to have the four of us sit around the table and just enjoy a big salad, that does my heart very well.
Without a doubt. I have a few questions as we wrap up our interview today. I would like to know, what is success to you?
Success, you know, to me, success is when you can acknowledge a higher being for the outcome. So it's not about what I accomplished, it's about what God allowed me to accomplish, or how God helped me to accomplish something. So I'll say success truly is where I could say, yep, that was him who did it.
Right. So acknowledging God and the things that happen in your life is a part of success as well.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It's not necessarily, you know, some people think it's money. Some people think it's, you know, just have different thoughts. And again, no judgment. If that's how people approach it, that's fine. For me, because I know money can go, people can come and go, but the love of God, it's there. And so when I do things that I know that are pleasing to him, I feel like that is success.
Without a doubt. I'd also like to know from you, while we have your time and we wrap up today, what is greatness to you?
I think greatness is when we have the ability to impact others. So it's not, again, I take a very selfless approach. It's not about what we can do for ourselves. It's the impact that we can have on others. And it could be just one person or it could be multiple people. But when you can change the life, change the trajectory of someone's life, I think that's greatness. And I think there are so many people who are experiencing greatness out there. And I'm just really excited about what you're doing on this show. You are one that when I think of greatness, I think of Cedric Riley.
Wow. That means a lot to me. I want to let you know, Marsha, that today the reason why I wanted to talk about your childhood and how you survived the adversities that you had and then you became successful is because today you're living in greatness. And I want to let the world know that I respect you. I think that the work that you've done has been commendable. I think other people should know about it. Today we give you your crown and let the world know that you are one of America's next motivators. Welcome to the Pride Empowerment Network. Everybody, this is Marsha Thornton on another installment of America's Next Motivator.
Thank you, Cedric. Bye.
Bye.